It is January 8th, 2 days after the Democrat Party's religious holiday, and and actually and actually 1 year and 12 days until um, somebody different is going to be running the country, because I don't think there's any chance, at least not according to what I saw earlier on Newsmax, is that there's a prediction from one of uh, the companies that does these prognostications about the economy, and they have their surprise predictions. I forget which, it's not Price Waterhouse, but somebody like that. And they said they predicted that Joe Biden will step down from the nomination
Shocker.
between Super Tuesday, which is March 4th, 5th, or something,
Fifth, yeah, fifth this year.
and Election Day, which is quite a swath of time to play with, but that's their prediction, which is, that's not a political entity. It was like but they probably are providing this guidance to all of these betting things that go on, that bet on who's going to win what in politics, just like you can do in car racing and horse racing and
Sure.
sports.
Yeah.
Betting.
Yeah, biggest stake odds on anything.
And there are people are betting something that they don't want to lose. So you can actually believe them more than you can believe a lot of the people that actually do polls and claim to know something about what is going to happen, because more often than not, they don't really know anything. But
yeah, polls are propaganda, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, a lot of them really, they're supposed to be engaging in science, just like the science that apparently helps us understand how we are apparently controlling the weather by using natural gas to cook our food and drive cars.
Well, that's not how we're controlling. We control the weather by how much taxes we pay.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and we're going to be paying a lot more. Actually, let me start off.
And that will change the weather, so I'm told.
Yeah, well, they promised that. So here's an interesting story. It kind of started out as a mundane story about wildfires and how more money is needed for wildfires. But then I listened to the whole thing, which I don't always have time to do that, because they just go on and on and on about blah, 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 blah. And then finally, there were some interesting tidbits. So Elizabeth Steiner is a state senator. She was big on the HB 2002, the genital mutilation bill, and
Sex Trafficker Assistance Act.
Exactly. She was furious when it was modified quite significantly as a result of the Senate walkout. I actually was there in the Capitol and saw her throwing a fit with this angry look on her face when she's talking to the media, because they had to compromise it all on this. She, unfortunately, is my state senator, and now I didn't have a conversation with her. I knew how pointless that would be.
Well, a disappointed Democrat's a good Democrat.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And so what happened is she has proposed taxing every property owner over a certain number of acres in the state in order to pay for fighting wildfires, which apparently they don't have any money for because they're too busy blowing it on some of the other things we're going to talk about here today. And they incessantly blow money on stuff, like gargantuan sums of money are just disappearing. And so she's proposing this. And she's not the only one, but the story highlighted that she wants to actually tax everybody in the state for something that you would expect the government would already make a priority of, which is putting the fires out, even if they're not going to, prevent them. And the title of the story is Oregon needs more money to fight big wildfires. Who should pay for it?
I think the logging company should pay for it on all the timber they take out of the forests.
Right. Except they don't.
That's how Oregon was financed for a century.
I know. But why would you come up with something that works and actually pays for itself? No, these guys are saying that they don't think that is how they want to do it. They want to instead just tax people for literally just owning property. and making them pay for it. And of course, one of the first reactions, she got a bunch of property owners together from across the state. And
Yeah.
apparently, a bunch of people in Eastern Oregon thought, you know what, we don't really own a lot of harvestable forest land. We got a lot of prairie and
Yeah.
just empty space.
Sagebrush.
So why are you going to tax us to go pay to fight forest fires that aren't happening anywhere close to our land? And this exposes not only the foolishness, but something else. I want everyone to remember who Elizabeth Steiner is. She's doing something. She's actually running for state treasurer, and she doesn't know anything about the treasury or money, which is the perfect qualification for a Democrat running for state treasurer, because their only qualification is that they have been chosen by the public employee unions to run for this position.
Right.
So and that's all she is. And she's just going to propose taxes and fees out the yin yang to pay for it. And she's claiming that this is an all Oregon problem now. Whenever they say that, means they're going to tax the crap out of a bunch of people who have nothing to do with it. She's saying that's different than where we were 10 years ago. And of course, as we know, they were getting federal transfer fees and stuff coming through for counties to be able to do stuff. And of course, the world is going to end due to climate change. And because of that, we're in a different place than we were 10 years ago. And of course, the other person that's mouthing off on this is Senator, is it Jeff Golden of Ashland? He wants a tax on the value of industrial timber harvest to pay for it.
We have that already.
Yeah, exactly.
Anytime you harvest timber out of a forest in Oregon, you pay a tax.
Yep. So that's why we need a new tax, David, because we already have a tax and they've already spent it on something else.
Right,
also,
right.
They point out in this article that other states have forests. So I don't know if they had.
Other states have what?
Other states have forests, and they also have forest fires. They have wildfires, and they don't do this. They don't do this because they use something called the general fund to pay for fighting fires, which are supposed to be infrequent, not something that you enjoy every year, along with
on multiple occasions every year.
Yeah, along with going swimming and picnicking. You get a good wildfire along with that to boot. And of course, we're terrible at fighting them here. I should say BLM, not
the federal government is really bad at fighting forest fires in Oregon. ODF is really good at fighting forest fires in Oregon. ODF's Oregon Department of Forests, their philosophy is to go in there and put the fire out. The federal philosophy is to enlarge the fire, burn up some stuff that we think should be burned anyhow, and spend as much money as possible. Yeah, I don't think people realize how much money is spent on forest fires, but
billions.
Some of these forest fires, like just the one down the street from me last year, it will suck up $100 million. Just that one fire. Yeah. I mean, they burn $1 to $3 million a day. The feds, once the feds get involved, if it's on national forest land, and they just drag it out, and it's an incredibly different strategy for fighting forest fires. Whereas like the 99 fire, which was Canyonville, that was an ODF. That was on ODF lands. They jumped on that thing with everything they could, and they kept that thing down to about 10,000 acres, and they just put it the hell out. So my hat's off to ODF for that, and I'm not real impressed with the way the federal government does theirs.
So here's something interesting. At the moment when they're asking, and this article points this out, the moment they're asking for more tax revenue, because they say, well, what we have is we don't have enough money. We already gave them a bunch of time, so they can't say that anymore. They know people are sick of it, but they're saying they need more money in order to be ready to fight these fires. But to this day, no one in state government or the forestry department can provide a clean figure for how much revenue has been lost since apparently some severance tax was eliminated in 1999. They think it might be $3 billion. So they're just going to go out and say, we need a bunch of money. And this is how they do. This is how they roll.
We'll tell you when it's enough.
Yeah, we'll tell you. When you try,
no more. We have plenty. Right.
Yeah, and you know what? They say they want the tax to increase to as much as 6% on companies and individuals holding 5,000 acres of land or more. Now, one fly in the ointment is, it would seem, a problem that so many chunks of land in private hands are in real estate investment trusts, which I guess are tax exempt. And so they are likely to incentivize that trend to continue so that they'll raise the taxes so that even more property will end up in the hands of tax exempt people to avoid the tax.
Right. Yeah, well, I know down here in the Illinois Valley where I live, a whole bunch of timberland was purchased by the John Hancock Company, the insurance company,
Mm-hmm.
and they're they're not going to be real happy about that because they got probably tens of thousands of acres down here that they periodically harvest timber off of. But yeah, it's well, like you said, I mean, there's never enough money, even though we blew $300 million studying a bridge we didn't build, $500 million for a website that never worked, still doesn't work. And now what are we looking at? Another $426 million that seems to just go missing.
Oh, let's dig into that. That's a good next story. And there's been several headlines about this, and there's a real battle.
You want me to pay more taxes?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Just keep losing all of these funds. And you know what? In this case, it was not only due to mismanagement, but their inability to prevent fraud. And so let me give you the lowdown on this. There's a few articles about it. One of them I got to, it was the Daily Wire, which is a national outfit, and said that Oregon lost track of $426 million in federal pandemic funds. Federal pandemic funds, just keep that in mind, for emergency rental assistance. So they were supposed to pay it to the landlords for anybody who said, I can't pay my rent. Please send a check to my landlord because, and during the pandemic, a bunch of people were told they weren't allowed to work and their businesses were closed. So that was
landlords were told that they couldn't evict people for not paying rent.
Yeah. And so they made it so you couldn't be evicted, but then they knew that if they put all the landlords into bankruptcy, that this also would be a problem. So they came up with this one big problem with the scheme. They never were really serious about it actually working because they did two things. One is they realized that the current entities that they work with to disperse funds like this to people weren't going to be inadequate. So they hired some outside companies to do this. And the guy from one of the companies actually said, and I warned them that this is going to be a problem, that there would be a lot of fraud because there's no way we could catch it all. He told an example. He said, we actually had people applying and receiving at times until we caught it and stopped it. People were applying for this assistance with copies of Oregon driver's licenses that were so fake that they misspelled the word Oregon in the driver's license. I mean, if you can be taken for hundreds of millions of dollars by dumb criminals that can't spell the name of the state that they're applying for the assistance from, and the state can't stop them from receiving this assistance, you have a problem. And then on top of that, a problem that way. And tell me if you haven't heard this, if this doesn't suddenly sound like deja vu all over again. Part of the reason why this also screwed up was because the legitimate people who were applying for this assistance they went ahead, the state, the housing assistance department, implemented this with a piece of software that they hadn't even tested and was brand new. And so it didn't work. So all so like I said,
Oregon and computers don't mix.
no, so this is just like what they did when they couldn't dispense all the unemployment stuff, and when they couldn't implement a website to disperse or to handle the Cover Oregon Obamacare system, and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on this and still couldn't do it. And guess what?
Or couldn't upgrade the DMV computers. The list just goes on and on and on.
Well, and the best thing about it is, just like we've heard before, they said that this system, the system problem that they had at the housing, this housing entity, by the way, is not a housing entity that is there for like regular housing situation. It's actually the emergency housing entity. It's the one that if all of a sudden some volcano or earthquake did in a bunch of homes or wildfires, that they're the ones who are supposed to jump in on short notice and immediately make sure that you have a place to live until the recovery happens and we get back on our feet. So these guys they shouldn't have been surprised by something like a pandemic to the extent that they weren't ready to do something. The problem was they weren't ready to do something, and an audit from years ago, I think they said 2016, warned them that they weren't ready for this. And sure enough, 2020 comes around and they weren't. Now, that sounds exactly like what happened with the employment department and exactly what happened with other things that they failed to do. They were told sometimes as much as 10 years earlier and even had money to fix it. And they didn't do a damn thing.
The executive branch of the state of Oregon has a long history of being unable to execute. They just can't manage anything. And taxpayers should look at that and go, yeah, don't ask me for any more taxes.
Yeah, it's totally unnecessary to give people like that more money.
Yeah.
They will simply leave you sitting out in the middle of the wilderness, unable to live in anything, while some fraudster in cyberspace will submit fake documents and get grants for illegitimate claims. They could be in another country, and they'll be siphoning money from the same entity, unable to stop it.
Yeah, now, please send the check to Nairobi.
Yeah, exactly. P.O. Box in Nairobi. And what's more amazing is that they did a random search of the claims that they did process. That this random search went and it found 66 random claims just to see, how successful were they at processing these claims correctly. 17 out of the 66 randomly found claims had errors in them, like deep flaws in the claim, and that's 1/3 of what they were processing. And that meant that when you hear 426 million, it's not a surprise because they were processing billions and billions of dollars, and 1/3 of this was had errors in just a random sampling. And so the auditors that were reviewing this, they put this out. It went to the media. The housing authority literally got all these questions saying, why are you guys screwing up? What'd you do with $426 million in federal funds? Where is it? Who got it? And they actually can't tell anybody. They can't actually provide any statistics on who they helped. And they were asked directly by these media entities for comment, and they said no comment. Tina Kotek was asked about this. Tina Kotek's response, no comment. I'm going with the auditors on this one, who actually did talk to the media, laid out all the facts. The housing authority says that they were using the wrong data. That was the only thing that they said, and they wouldn't actually answer any questions. The ones who can't answer any questions are the ones who have a problem when this comes out. So $426 million up in smoke. They want more money.
Yeah.
They want more money.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's a simple answer. No. By the way, I think you posted something about this 2024, 26 new laws, a cell tax, a 5% gas tax, and electricity is 17% more expensive. That's what's happening now. and nothing's being done about all this incompetence and waste.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't see what the disconnect is between people's pocketbooks and the way the state spends their money. You know, I don't know if they just don't know, they don't hear about it, they don't think about it. They think, oh, $426 million. What's $426 million that you can't find, or $1 billion that you can't find? It was 426 million.
It was
Yeah,
426 million that they
yeah,
have lost
almost
track
half
of
a
it
billion
now.
dollars. Just like Cover Oregon, almost a half a billion dollars or $500 million. A third of $1 billion for the bridge. Uh, just vaporized. I don't understand why voters don't see that, Kevin.
While somebody who can't even spell the word Oregon using Photoshop created a fake driver's license and milked the state for money that they didn't. That's how it's worse than just being unable to help people. It's helping criminals.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is something our state's good at. They're
Yeah.
great at helping criminals, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what you get when you hire someone and their job is to make sure the money goes away.
Yeah, that's right. Because if it's not spent, we won't get more of it next year and claim we're out of it. So,
Now, I am not against hiring competent companies, though. You've heard me say that during the unemployment insurance crisis that we had in the state of Oregon, and who knows what the consequences of that actually were. It's not like we have any news report on the thousands of people that lost their homes or their cars or got kicked out of their apartment because they couldn't get unemployment checks. But I said it then, and I'd say it now. I mean, farm that stuff out to a for-profit, competent company. Farm that out to Amazon.
yeah,
Call up Amazon and say, hey, look, yeah, we got a crisis here. We can't deal with it. Our software can't handle it. We are completely and totally incompetent. It's been proven many, many times over. Handle this for us and charge us a fee.
Yeah, and competitively bid it out.
Yeah.
And when they screw up, fire them.
Yeah.
Have performance targets and metrics, all the stuff that government apparently doesn't have any of. Because if they had that, they'd be fired.
KPIs, there's no KPIs in government.
Yeah.
Well, the KPI is to make sure that the your key performance indicators in government, particularly in the state of Oregon, is to make sure there's no money left in the pot.
Yeah, and that you spend as much of it as possible. And claim, look at how much money we're spending. We really care. We really care. Well, we've got some other pretty interesting stories, but that pair with the wildfires and the taxing everything, and then never actually fighting the wildfires sufficiently, and then the waste and failure with this housing stuff, it's a warning. We have to make a change in 2024. You keep sending back the same people. They're going to do the same thing, and quit saying yes to taxes that fund all of this, because
God, no
it's
kidding,
like feeding
man.
wild animals.
Yeah.
They're going to come back and say, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And if you don't give us more to eat, probably going to eat you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'll be unsafe.
You'll be unsafe. Yes.
Your schools will close and the fire department won't be able to help you, and there'll be no police. That's,
Well, the fire department will be too busy responding to fentanyl overdoses and dispensing Narcan to deal with your heart attacks. Sorry, dude.
Well, taxpayers die of heart attacks for lack of a first responder.
I mean, I'm laughing because if I didn't laugh, I'd be crying. That's really a serious matter. Well, shifting gears to still more incompetence. I saw the title of this headline. You probably heard that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who is in the presidential command authority, like
somebody the president should talk to daily.
Yeah, well, actually, if you believe that Joe Biden potentially is not on the job all the time, that perhaps he's taken like 450 days or something of vacation. It's been over half of his presidency so far. He's actually been on vacation and not capable of handling anything. As we've seen repeatedly, he's just kind of a delusional fool who you wouldn't want in charge of some of these decisions. So you say, well, I think I will just hope that the people under him are competent and on the ball. Well, it turns out Lloyd Austin, who had an elective medical procedure about, let's see, it was about a week and a half ago, experienced complications from this procedure, experienced pain, and had to go back to the hospital. And he was in the hospital in the ICU, the intensive care unit, for several days and didn't tell anyone. And so let's say China makes a move on Taiwan or something like that. This guy was not available. Biden, of course, is on vacation at the same time. And the deputy defense secretary, some gal, I have no idea who she is, never heard of her, but she was supposed to assume these duties. She was on vacation in Puerto Rico. And they didn't actually tell the White House for like 3 or 4 days that the defense secretary all this while was in the ICU. He's still in the ICU.
Wow.
Of course, Biden was asked today if Lloyd Austin was going to keep his job, and the answer was, of course. And that's what you're going to get from this this administration. And if you thought it was just the state of Oregon that was complete F-ups, asking for more money, there's the Brandon administration. And I loved this article. It's basically entitled, "There's useless, and then there's Lloyd Austin useless." It's a degree of uselessness that
I saw that title.
and you have to admit that if you can set a
was
new
that PJ
standard for
Media?
uselessness, you're amazing.
Is that PJ Media? It was PJ. Yeah, that was
PJ
Steven
Media.
Kruger.
That's
Yeah.
right. It was Steven Cruiser.
Yeah,
And
he's a friend.
as we were all mentally and emotionally preparing ourselves for 2024, I wrote many times this year is going to be a weird one. It appears that the nondescript entity in charge of annual weirdness levels thought I was making a request, is what Cruiser said. We're only 1 week into 2024, and we could already use heavy sedation. There are a lot of things I could have come up with in my rather fertile imagination that might have set the tone for this year. But having the Secretary of Defense win a game of hide and seek with the President of the United States is out there even for me, he said. Yeah. The Secretary of State is AWOL, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to start your day with a good laugh, everybody, go to PJ Media and subscribe to the morning briefing. You'll get it in your email every day. It doesn't cost anything. Steven Cruiser, he's a friend of mine. I've known him for, quite a long time now, I guess. And he's a comedian by trade and a very, very gifted writer. And it's a good way to start the day.
Yeah, and in this case, just like many of these things, you don't even have to be a massive comedic talent, because the stories are
they write themselves,
and then you just react to them, right?
Yeah, the jokes write themselves. But on a serious note, it's as President of the United States, I mean, I know that there's a threat briefing every day, right? That's my understanding.
I don't know if they're giving it to Joe Biden.
And you would think, Joe Biden and the Secretary of Defense would be there. I know if I were the President of the United States and I had chosen a Secretary of Defense and she was confirmed by the Senate, I would want that person there every day, because I mean that's job one for President of the United States. You're Commander in Chief. You have to know the threats to the country, and you have to know what they are on a moving basis. It's kinetic, it's dynamic, and it's just absolutely. It's like no one's minding the store, Kevin.
Well, and the fact is that if there were an enemy attack, one of the goals would be to decapitate a command and control, to create chaos. You try to make sure that all of a sudden there's chaos and confusion, maybe different attacks or incidents that would cause people to be distracted or not realize what's going on. And they don't even need to do that. The Biden administration is a self-decapitated government. It's got a cognitively impaired commander-in-chief who is probably sleeping through all of this stuff. And then a defense secretary in the ICU, and then an assistant defense secretary on vacation in Puerto Rico. Well,
the Biden administration's chief selling point is it's pre-collapsed.
It's pre-collapsed.
It's shipped to you already collapsed, non-functional. You know, whatever the Chi-Coms or the Russians are willing to bid, then you know, that's what you get.
Well, it's actually even worse than that
It'll
because
save it'll save you a nuke. You know,
it'll save you a nuke.
you
That's
know, you
right.
don't
You
you
don't
don't
have
have
to
to
nuke.
nuke the White House.
That's right. It's like they've already surrendered. It's like they pre-surrendered, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And of course, it's even better than that because now the Biden administration is arresting itself. The TSA director, there's a TSA director who's arrested by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. She was charged with assisting in the forgery of documents, transferring property from an elderly relative with dementia to herself and an accomplice. She's been arrested, ironically, by an entity that hardly arrests anybody anymore, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. They, they were, I'd like to know. I would love to be
Yeah,
there. Not
we
only
got
to see
300,000 people a month coming across the border, and they're arresting some TSA official. She's higher up, as I understand, for defrauding an elderly person. Oh my God!
yeah, so she's wanted because she's wanted for her arrest posted by the St. Lucia County, Florida Sheriff's Office. Which claims she and an alleged accomplice named Delroy Chambers Sr. exploited a relative suffering from dementia by falsifying documents in their name, according to the police. Florida authorities allege the duo forged signatures on a quitclaim deed, transferring ownership of the property of the relative's name to themselves. The relative whose property was transferred uh, allegedly could not have signed the claim deed because they
Can't hold a pen.
have dementia. Because the individual was found to have been in Atlanta on the date listed also, so they couldn't physically have been present to sign it when the claim of the signing took place. So they also have that. I mean, this is out of the dumb criminal file, and this person is
Yeah.
to be protecting the airport terrorists. Just keep in
The Darwin Award.
That's right. So anyway, she's facing a third-degree felony charge, and she is apprehended after touching down in Atlanta on an international flight. I'd sure like to know where she was prior to this, flying in internationally. And of course, the TSA issued a statement saying they hold their employees to the highest professional conduct and ethical standards, has no tolerance for misconduct on or off duty. And they will be held accountable. Blah, 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 blah.
It's good that Customs and Border Patrol are doing something.
Yeah. You know, they at least found one criminal that they couldn't let go anymore. And for once, we end up with less. But see, that's the Biden administration. Now they are arresting themselves. And if you thought that was the worst, I've got an even better one for you. So this is an exclusive by the Daily Caller from January 5th. The headline says, CDC, so the Centers for Disease Control, champions addressing racism and injustices over jailing criminals to prevent violence. This is the Center for Disease Control, not a law enforcement entity. But because we've turned everything into a kind of like pandemic or medical condition, they have said that we would be better off addressing the root causes of violence like racism, and that'll make communities safer all by itself, rather than doing what was done in the past, which actually did show results, which is arresting violent criminals and prosecuting them and putting them in jail. They recommend releasing them into the community and then trying to claim that it's not the fault of the criminals, but in fact, society, who of course will suffer the actual punitive consequences for this by having more crime committed in their neighborhoods.
Right. Well, you know, if we were able to, if stamping out racism were able to make communities safer, then Chicago would be saved, because all you have to do is stamp out the racism in Chicago, and then Black people would stop dying regularly at the hands of other Black people. Right?
Yeah, it would instantly happen. You know, this is the thing, is that they say that economic inequality, over incarceration, racism, structural inequities.
Yeah.
If
Well,
we got
that's what the people in Chicago, they're shooting themselves, each other. That's what they're shooting each other's over. They
that's
want economic equality. Some territories belong to certain people, and they want equity.
That's right. I bet if you could hear them as they're shooting people, they're probably shouting out slogans about, "Look, I'm tired of all this racism, so I'm shooting you. I'm black and you're black, and I'm going to
Yeah.
shoot you because I'm tired of
Black
racism."
Lives Matter, you white supremacist.
That's right.
Trumper. The Bloods are the Trumpers, right? Because they wear red.
That's exactly right. And so, but what's even more amazing is that we even listen to the Center for Disease Control on this, who like to refer to this as community violence. It's not violence committed by individuals. They also refer to firearm violence because apparently firearms all by themselves just run around in the streets and shoot people, and criminals have nothing to do with it. Nothing.
Yeah.
These people are running the system that's supposed to actually combat the next pandemic, ladies and gentlemen.
Somebody needs to make an animation like that. Because I just had the thought of a gun prancing down the street by itself, with no holder, shooting people.
That's right.
And running around the corner of a building and hiding.
Yeah, a car going down the street with nobody in it, nobody driving it, and a gun out the window all by itself, like street sweeping.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
And then throwing itself in a dumpster and running away. That's
you. I think
or reloading itself without thumbs.
That's well. And the thing is, this is what these people actually believe. This has led to the policies that have resulted in the crime that we're seeing.
Yeah.
Well, these same folks that apparently think they are dealing with or addressing crime, that's not only how they think, but here's how they actually think about people that apparently went to the Capitol on January 6th and wanted to make their voices peacefully and patriotically heard as the president encouraged them. There's been some news that's broken on this, some important news. One is about what actually happened with Ashley Babbitt. She was the one person who actually was killed on January 6th, and she was killed by a Capitol Police lieutenant who, as it turns out, right after having shot her, made a false police report to the effect of, he said that he was returning fire. She was unarmed. There was video about this.
Well, there was several police officers within arm's reach of Babbitt when it happened.
Yeah. And so witnesses that could testify to the contrary. This false police report not only was given by this police lieutenant, but then because he said shots are being fired at him in the speaker's lobby, but then this also led to a panic across all of the police who thought that this is a real report. It was a guy covering his butt for having shot somebody in cold blood who was unarmed. And in fact, they show in this report that Ashley Babbitt, there was a guy standing next to this window that did get broken into, that Ashley Babbitt actually struck that guy in the nose for busting out the window. So she was going after him for busting out the window. They actually have footage of that, of him being punched in the nose for doing this. I'm trying to remember the guy's name here, but when you read through this entire thing, this has got the text transcription of the dispatches. It also shows very detailed video of this happening in each stage. There's a guy named Sam Montoya who was nearby and captured on video what occurred. And this is Ashley Babbitt like punching a guy in the face for busting out the window. Then it was after that the Capitol police officer took his .44 and shot her. Then after she was shot, immediately there was a doctor who I believe was an anesthesiologist or a cardiothoracic anesthesiologist who was nearby. His name is Dr. Austin Harris. He knelt down with his medical bag that he had with him and checked for a pulse and began assessing her wounds and trying to treat her. Another person nearby also tried to assist, who was a videographer, young Kim, but he had medic training. And so he was assisting Dr. Harris. Both of them, after trying to attend to her, were forced by police to stop their efforts and abandon the scene, and were shoved out of the way and forced to exit the area while they were rendering this assistance to her. The police did call for an EMT to be sent, but as you know, when you get shot like that, if you are going to survive, it's probably just seconds, to stop bleeding and to engage in some effort to stabilize at least the bleeding, if not being in shock, etc. This guy, his identity, Lieutenant Byrd, was hidden for 9 months after that. I think it was 9. And once he did actually have his identity revealed, he did an interview with NBC News to explain his side of the story, and he was moved to Joint Base Andrews to be in protected status because of the concern that they believed somebody be trying to kill him. Which, of course, I don't know. I mean, there are threats to people that end up in the public domain all the time, but they acted like this from the get-go, that this is what they had planned for months and months.
Right.
They actually announced prior to the release of the information that I just described, including the false report, they announced that they had decided that he would not be charged with any crime for what he did, that he would not be charged in her shooting. And before this information was made public, it wasn't even apparently available to the investigators. And so he murdered somebody, is what it looks like, got away with it. And then the government actively went out of their way to kind of cover up who he was and what happened. And only now is it coming out. It was 6 months, by the way. July 8th was when he was moved to that military base, and before that interview aired on NBC News. So I don't know. Sounds to me like J6 was the case for the inside job arranged beforehand. Certainly the inside job was done afterwards by all the evidence here. A police officer murdered somebody, lied about it. It was an unarmed person. He created deadly confusion amongst the rest of the Capitol Police, who thought that somebody was actually shooting at them as a result of what he said. And then they also prevented her from receiving timely treatment, such that it probably contributed to her death, because I believe she was shot in the shoulder and bled out. It wasn't like a gunshot wound to the head or something like that, which could have been immediately fatal. So this is the real story of what happened.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, J6 was obviously not an insurrection. It was a protest made riot by paid agitators, and those who have been jailed are in fact political prisoners because of a corrupt and tiered justice system that's been weaponized by anti-Republicans, basically. And that's the sad part about January 6th. Ashley Babbitt's death is a sad part about January 6th. There were, I think, 3 others that died on January 6th, at least one of a heart attack. One, I think, was beaten by police officers and then trampled, a woman from Alabama, if I remember correctly. No, it's Georgia, actually. Yeah. And and that's the sad part about January 6th. And you don't hear that out of the mouths of the ruling Democrats. You hear it as an attack on democracy. And You know, it was with the exception of Ashley Babbitt, it was mostly a bloodless coup. You know, that's what they're trying to say it was. And you know, no power was transferred. No politicians were hung like maybe they should have been, and you know, no government was overthrown. It was a protest, and it was turned into a riot again by paid agitators. Someday, I hope that we know that, and I know that at least one person has called on Speaker. Who's the Speaker? Johnson.
Mike Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Johnson to release the digital files in the days that preceded that as well, which I forget who the person was who was calling for it. Somebody in Congress, I believe. They said that releasing these digital files will make it clear that it was an inside job and that the Oregon Republican Party was correct.
That's right. I know. Well, I don't know if we'll get that Oregon Republican Party thing as correct, but by default, that would actually become true, wouldn't it? So
it would become true, yeah.
Yeah.
And it would make every Republican member of the House at the time not true. And
so
and the two people that recanted their support of that statement shortly after we released it, they would be no longer on the side of history as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly, we hope everybody learns of that reality too, because sometimes time passes and people forget things. Now, to his credit, former Vice President Mike Pence said today, much to the surprise of the lamestream media who liked him when he was saying negative things about President Trump, Vice President Pence says that January 6th was not a, quote, insurrection, unquote, and denounces efforts to block Trump from the ballot. He is coming out and making it very clear that it was not an insurrection, and it definitely should not result in preventing President Trump from appearing on state ballots, which of note, we know, of course, Colorado's Supreme Court has said this, and Maine Secretary of State has said this. There is a court case here in Oregon by a group that's claiming to defend democracy by preventing people from exercising it, which is, typical here in Oregon, and that wants to make it so that he cannot be on the ballot. And there's several other states, Illinois, a whole series of states where they're banning this about. But Mike Pence, kudos for coming out and saying this. And he would know better than the people that are trying to claim insurrection because he was in the Capitol at the time.
Right. Well, I remember watching video of the House floor because it was Ashley Babbitt was at the door of the House chamber, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And there were people in there having normal conversations. You could see them in the background of the video.
And there's even some audio of the guy in the Wookiee outfit chatting with these guys. And it's just a normal conversation. Like, let's go in here. Okay, have a look in here,
Yeah. And he thanked them on the way out.
Yeah.
Thanked them for their patience. And
not
at all what we were told at the very beginning and for the a couple of years following. Not at all like that. What it was.
Well, and the other thing is, many of the things that people have been charged with, they are serving a hard time for.
Yeah.
They based on the idea that this was in fact an insurrection. And so the vice president saying what he said is probably foreshadowing here, because what's going to happen is the feds who have gone hard on the January 6th defendants, they've dismissed most of the Portland riot cases. And so we're really looking at a justice system that's completely broken.
Chain the door shut on a federal building with people still inside and light it on fire.
No biggie. No biggie. They're not disrupting an official proceeding of any kind. They're just trying to make sure everybody can stay warm and toasty while
Right.
while they witness protests against racial injustice outside by
Right.
spoiled white kids in black bloc.
Right.
No, this is
We
pretty
don't even live here.
exactly. You don't
Yeah.
even live
Who
there.
fly in on Thursday and leave on Sunday night.
And this is the same federal government, by the way. I spied this article just this afternoon that says that illegal aliens tried nearly 48,000 times to purchase firearms over the last 25 years. So this is the entity that says they're going to keep everybody safe by making sure that law-abiding American citizens with Second Amendment rights cannot obtain a firearm without the permission of the government or at all. And they can't prevent people who run across the border and may have criminal records from purchasing firearms in the United States. It is. Why even spend 5 seconds listening to these people? Really? That's how they.
I
That's
can't
how they
justify it, so I don't.
Well, I do believe that we are starting to come to this stage here where they're running out of options to save Joe Biden. One of the things I liked reading the most just recently here was that of all people, Barack Obama is in a state of panic about Joe Biden. It's actually Matt Margulies. He said, Barack Obama hits panic button on Biden campaign, and I'm laughing hysterically. That is, I think, increasingly true here is that I mentioned that prediction. Maybe that prediction is not a prediction. It's something with foreknowledge. Like maybe that guy got a phone call from Barack Obama just before he made his incredible prediction.
Right. Well,
Barack Obama isn't predicting the future. Barack Obama is deciding the future of Biden campaign. Wouldn't you say?
Well, he predicted Biden's future long ago when he said, "Never underestimate Joe's ability to f things up."
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, and you know, if you think that there's a problem with 2024, maybe we can cap it off with this little story here. On the one hand, they are getting the word out about Mike Schmidt in Portland. That is happening. And there's a billboard that just went up. They put it up because the people running Portland claimed or complained that it pissed them off and claimed that it was unfairly spoiling their love fest trying to promote how great things are in Portland. They claimed that actually it was damaging the city, even though what the billboard was talking about was the damage the people were running the city that were angry about the billboards were doing. So people of Portland put up another billboard. They took the other one down and put this one up, and it says, "Can you believe this Schmidt?"
I saw that billboard.
So it's Mike Schmidt wearing a crown on his head that says Lion, Lion as in telling lies, and it says, "I grade myself quite frankly very highly." He gives himself an A. And then they list all the things that have happened under his watch. Portland under DA Schmidt, record drug deaths, increased shooting, extreme vandalism, rampant car thefts, F. And apparently, by putting up that political advertisement, they are damaging the city. Can you
Well, they don't need to worry about the billboards because I think the city of Portland has figured out how to fix Portland. They're going to build a $15 million skate park, and that'll just revitalize the whole city.
Actually, it'll just make it faster due to the drug deals because you can just skate right in there, make your drug deal, skate out, and do kind of a 360, and then just take off again and get resupplied. And it's actually going to turbocharge the drug deals.
It really is.
It would be very fun to watch. Like people might pay to watch it. Now I think it's worth calling this out. The city of Gerhardt over in on the coast has decided that the solution to their problems is to ban political signage. They're going to ban political signage, which I believe is unconstitutional. Because I think
it seems like it's been tested, if I remember correctly.
I believe so. And of course, they're saying that it's on public rights of way that they're going to prevent it. But they also said that signs that had too much political content to them, quote unquote, are going to be the ones that they don't want to see displayed anymore.
Too much Schmidt on them.
Too much Schmidt.
Political Schmidt.
Which what it means is that anything that doesn't make the rulers happy are going to be banned. And something tells me that that's already shaping the court test to come. They must not have very good legal advice in that city.
No. No. Well, doesn't surprise me.
Well, let your freak flags fly. Get your signs up, get your flags out. Don't let them stop you. And I know that we can turn 2024 around, especially by telling people about all the stuff we just shared with you today. You can read the articles. We posted them on Facebook and YouTube. I don't know why they're not posting on Twitter yet, but you can go find them on Facebook and YouTube. And you can see that we just quoted from articles that are written about this stuff. We're not making any of this up.
No. We're just amplifying the mainstream media. So why would anybody censor that?
That's right. That is exactly right. Well, David, thank you so much for joining me here tonight. It's been a great show and a fun night, as Bobby points out. And we wish all of you a fun night. And we will see you tomorrow night on the next episode of The Captive Audience. And, we'll have even more news that'll be just as crazy. So you got to tune in. We'll see you then.
Good night.